Welcome back to the deep dive. We are really glad you're here with us today. Usually when we say we're going to talk about local government machinery, people tend to, well, they tend to reach for the skip button.
Right, yeah. It sounds completely dry. It sounds like paperwork and zoning codes.
Exactly. It sounds like the opposite of a good time. But today, we are opening up a file that on the surface looks like standard bureaucratic procedure, but when you actually look inside, it's really teeming with drama.
Oh, absolutely teeming with
You're
them.
talking high-stakes negotiation. We're talking about residents doing forensic accounting on the fly. And we have a very specific mystery involving a consultant billing enough hours to, well, basically clone themselves.
It is a fascinating case study in how the world actually works at the local level. We are looking specifically at the Newtown Township Board of Supervisors meeting. This is from February 25th, 2026. And I know Board of Supervisors doesn't exactly scream thriller, but this meeting really had a bit of everything.
It really did. And before we get into the scandals, and there are scandals here, we really have to set the scene because the mood in the room matters so much for this one. It is late February 2026.
Right, and the context there is crucial. The region has just been absolutely hammered by snowstorms. I mean, everyone is exhausted.
Right.
The plow drivers are tired, the residents are cranky, and the supervisors honestly look like they've been through a war.
The winter fatigue was just palpable. I think my favorite moment of the entire meeting was right at the top when Chairman Merriman quoted a resident regarding the weather. He said, "It is no longer winter, it is harassment."
Which is such a perfect description for late February in
I
Pennsylvania.
felt that in my bones.
Yeah.
So you have this room full of tired officials, only four of them actually, because Supervisor Phil Calabro was absent. And they are trying to push through an agenda that involves literally millions of dollars, intermunicipal conflict, and of all things, broken heating systems.
And they're trying to do it while everyone is just completely done with the cold and the snow.
So our mission for you on this deep dive is to unpack three specific storylines that emerged from this meeting. We've organized them so we can really see what's going on beneath the surface. First, we have the fire services standoff, basically a very tense negotiation with a neighboring borough over who pays for the fire trucks.
That is definitely the big geopolitical conflict of the night.
Second, we have a detective story. A resident who decided to actually read the fine print on the bills list and found some numbers that, let's just say, don't add up very comfortably.
Right. And third, we're going to look at something called the consent agenda and the actual nitty-gritty of how tax dollars die from road salt to broken boilers.
Let's start with that headline event, the Fire Services Agreement. If you are listening to this and you aren't familiar with the specific geography of Newtown, give us the lay of the land here. Why exactly are neighbors fighting?
Sure, so picture a donut. Newtown Township is the big, doughy part of the donut. It's a larger municipality with a big tax base, lots of area. Right in the middle, the donut hole, is Newtown Borough.
Okay, a donut and a donut hole.
Exactly. The borough is a smaller, historic town. Now, they are separate political entities. They have different governments, different taxes, but they share emergency services.
Which makes sense, right? Fire doesn't stop at the border.
Sure.
If a house is burning in the borough, the fire truck comes from the township station.
Precisely. But here is the friction point. The economics of fire services have changed drastically in the last few years. Newtown Township has been transitioning from a volunteer-heavy model to a paid professional fire department.
And that is not cheap.
It is incredibly expensive. We are talking about full-time salaries, benefits, pensions, new equipment. The source material mentions that township residents are looking at a dedicated fire tax increase of roughly 3.75 mils.
Wow.
Yeah, that is about $3 million coming directly from township residents just to fund this professional staff.
Okay, so the township residents are footing the bill for this modernization. They're paying the premium to have professional firefighters on call 24/7. So where does the borough come in?
Well, the borough needs that coverage too. They're sitting right in the middle of the donut. But they aren't part of the township tax base. So the township has to send them a bill, basically saying, hey, if you want our trucks to show up when you call 911, you have to chip in. And that bill is exactly where the fight started.
The agenda item for this meeting was listed as a minor approval, which frankly feels like a massive misnomer given the context.
Oh, minor approval is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It really is. It was an authorization for an agreement where the borough pays $275,000 for fire coverage for the remainder of 2026. Now, $275,000 sounds like a lot of money to me, but apparently it's a bargain.
It is a massive bargain, and this is where the drama really kicked in during the meeting. A resident named Charles Foyer stood up. He was reading a letter on behalf of another resident, Eric Pomerantz. And Pomerantz had done the math that the board was maybe hoping nobody would look too closely at.
Let's walk through Pomerantz's argument, because it really strips away the politics and looks strictly at the numbers.
So Pomerantz points out that the township originally asked the borough for $350,000 for the year. And he notes that even that $350,000 was a friendship price.
A discount right out of the gate.
Exactly. The actual cost, if you take the total fire budget and divide it by call volume or population metrics, the actual estimated cost to provide that service to the borough is somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000.
Okay, let's get this straight. The fair price is $500,000. The township offered a deal at $350,000, and the borough said no.
The borough rejected the $350,000 outright. They countered with $275,000. And the township board, in this very meeting, was voting to accept that lower number.
And this is where Pomerantz got really upset, because he didn't just look at the flat number, he looked at the calendar.
Right. This is the pro-ration argument. The agreement was being signed in late February to start March 1st. That means for January and February of 2026, there was technically no agreement in place at all.
So they were operating on just a handshake.
Barely even that. It was a huge risk. But Pomerantz argued, look, if you take the already discounted rate of $350,000 and you prorate it for the remaining 10 months of the year, the number should be about $291,000.
So by accepting a flat $275,000, they aren't just giving a discount. They're essentially giving the borough 2 months of free service plus a discount on the rest of the year.
That was his exact conclusion. And he used very strong language. He called it a reckless step by the borough to risk having no coverage for 2 months. And he argued that township taxpayers, who, remember, are paying that $3 million tax hike, are now directly subsidizing the borough's safety. He asked the board a very pointed question. He said, how is that fair to us, your constituents?
It's a completely valid question. I mean, if I'm paying full price for Netflix and my neighbor negotiates a 50% discount for the exact same password, I'm going to be frustrated. But multiply that by millions of dollars in life-saving equipment. So why did the board agree to this? Why not hold the line and say, pay up or put out your own fires?
Well, this is the classic conflict in local government between fairness and pragmatism. The supervisors, specifically Supervisor Snyder and Supervisor Merck, took the pragmatic route. Their argument essentially boiled down to something is better than nothing.
A bird in the hand.
Exactly. Supervisor Snyder was very blunt about the negotiation process. She said they put their backs into getting the borough back to the table. The $350,000 figure wasn't even on the table anymore. The borough had walked away. So the choice wasn't $275,000 versus $350,000. The choice was $275,000 versus zero.
And if they get zero, they have a massive immediate hole in the budget.
Right. And it's not just about the money. There is the operational safety aspect. Fire Chief Forsyth weighed in on this during the meeting, and I think his input was probably the deciding factor for the board.
What did the chief have to say?
He confirmed that the lack of an agreement had actually forced him to reorganize the department inefficiently. Because they didn't know if they were legally covering the borough, he had to pull resources away from certain stations to consolidate his forces.
Oh, wow. So the political standoff was actually affecting where the fire trucks were parked on a daily basis.
Yes. He said that once this deal is signed, literally the minute the ink is dry, he can move a captain back to Station 45, which is the station that services the area near the borough. So Supervisor Merck's point was that signing this deal, even if the math is bad, even if it feels unfair to the taxpayers, it immediately makes the whole township safer.
So they swallowed the financial loss and the pride to secure the operational win.
Yes. And they emphasized that this is only for 2026. Supervisor Merck made a point to say that for 2027, they are already negotiating a formula to establish true parity. They are kicking the can down the road, sure, but they argue it was necessary to stop the bleeding right now.
It's a tough pill for the taxpayers to swallow, though. We'll fix it next year. It's a classic political promise. We'll see if they stick to it.
We definitely will. But speaking of things that taxpayers might find hard to swallow, we need to move to the second storyline. This is where the deep dive really earns its name. We need to talk about the consent agenda.
I feel like consent agenda is one of those terms specifically designed by bureaucrats to make people tune out.
Yeah.
It sounds incredibly boring. It sounds like the part of the meeting where you just check your phone.
That is by design, or at least that is the practical effect. In local government, a consent agenda is a tool for efficiency. You take a whole stack of routine items meeting minutes from last month, standard bill payments, payroll, minor purchases, and you bundle them into one single item on the agenda.
So instead of voting on 50 different checks, they just vote I once to approve the whole pile.
Right. And in theory, that's great. Nobody wants to sit there until midnight while they vote on buying paper clips or paying the electric bill. But a resident named John Mack pointed out a huge flaw in this system.
John Mack really seems to be the MVP of this meeting, by the way.
He really is. He is acting as the citizen auditor here. He's digging through the documents that usually just get rubber stamped. He pointed out that the consent agenda lumps millions of dollars of spending into a single vote. And if you aren't looking closely, big things can hide in there.
And he found something big.
He did. He was looking at the bills list for 2025, specifically regarding a consultant firm called Barry Isett and Associates.
Okay, so let's look at this. This firm handles code and zoning enforcement for the township. Basically, they are the people who check building permits, inspect construction sites, enforce the local rules.
Correct. It's outsourced enforcement.
And what was the total bill for 2025?
Over $500,000.
$500,000 for zoning enforcement.
It's a staggering number for a township this size. But Mack didn't just stop at the total. He looked at the contract terms to see how that number was built. The township pays this firm a rate of $100 per hour.
Okay, hold on. I'm pulling out my mental calculator here. To get to $500,000 at $100 an hour, that's 5,000 billable hours.
Exactly, 5,000 hours. Now let's put that in perspective. A standard full-time job, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, is roughly 2,000 hours, maybe 2,080.
So to bill 5,000 hours.
This firm would need to have 2.5 people working full-time exclusively for Newtown Township every single week of the year.
Or, as Mack framed it in the meeting, they're billing about 100 hours per week. Every week, rain or shine.
That seems excessive.
Right. Is there really that much zoning work in the township? I mean, are there people building secret skyscrapers we don't know about?
That is the $500,000 question. Mack asked, is the township being taken for a ride? Now, we have to be fair here. We don't have the firm's daily timesheets in front of us. Maybe they really do have a team of 5 inspectors swarming the township every day, checking every fence and every deck.
Maybe. But here is the real problem. Because this bill was buried in the consent agenda, there was no presentation. There was no breakdown. No supervisor stopped to ask, hey, why did we pay for 100 hours last week? It was just a check being written.
And that is exactly the danger Mack is highlighting. When you put a $500,000 expense into a bulk vote, you lose the opportunity to ask, wait, what exactly did we get for those 5,000 hours?
It definitely signals a need for better oversight. If a consultant is billing 100 hours a week, someone should probably be checking their homework.
Absolutely. And Mack didn't stop there. He found another item in the bills list that brings us back to that winter harassment theme we started with.
The road salt.
The salt. There was a bill for about $7,500 to a company called RP Blair. And the line item wasn't for the salt itself, it was just for transporting the salt.
Moving it from the depot to the township shed.
Right. And Mack's question was so simple. The township owns a fleet of large municipal trucks. In fact, they are currently buying a brand new dump truck for $205,000. So he asks, why are we paying a third-party contractor $7,500 to haul salt when we have our own trucks and our own drivers?
It's a totally logical question. If I buy a $200,000 pickup truck, I don't hire a mover to bring my mulch home from Home Depot. I do it myself. That's the entire point of having the truck.
Logic versus logistics. This is where government operations get messy. The counterargument, which, to be fair, wasn't fully explored in the meeting but is very common in these scenarios, is that during a major storm, the township trucks are busy.
Because they're out plowing.
Right. They are outfitted with plows and spreaders. They are out on the road clearing the snow. You can't necessarily pull a plow truck off its route to go make a 2-hour salt run to the depot.
So they pay the contractor to keep the supply chain moving while the township crews are actively fighting the storm.
That is the most likely explanation. But again, Mack's point stands. Why wasn't this discussed? Is it actually cheaper to pay the $7,500, or would it be cheaper to buy one more truck? Without the discussion, we just pay the bill.
It really highlights how much vigilance it takes to be a quote-unquote good citizen. Can't just show up and vote every 4 years. You have to literally read the invoices.
You do, and sometimes those invoices tell a story of sheer mechanical defeat. Which brings us to our third storyline. Let's talk about the boiler.
Oh, the administration building boiler. Honestly, this is painful for anyone who owns a house or an older car. This is the story of my life.
It is the textbook definition of the sunk cost fallacy.
Set the scene for us. What happened to the heat?
The administration building needed a new boiler. The final cost approved at this meeting was $25,000, paid to a company called Worth & Company.
Which, on its own, is fine. Boilers break. Old systems need to be replaced. It's a standard capital expense.
But John Mack, again bringing the receipts, pointed out the maintenance history leading up to this purchase. The records show the township spent about $1,500 recently to repair the old unit. Then, in early 2025, they spent another $4,000 trying to fix it again.
Oh, I know this cycle so well. You spend the $1,500 because you think, I really don't want to spend $25,000 right now. Then it breaks again. You spend $4,000 because you think, well, I already put $1,500 into it. I can't just let that go to waste.
And then 2 months later, the whole thing dies completely anyway, and you have to write the check for $25,000.
So in total, they didn't spend $25,000. They spent over $30,000.
Correct. Now, Mack wasn't necessarily criticizing the final purchase. Everyone agrees the building needs heat, especially during this winter harassment phase. But he used it as a lesson. He pointed out that the township did try to save money. They tried to limp the old system along. But in infrastructure, sometimes trying to be cheap ends up being incredibly expensive.
It's a good reminder that government buildings are just like big houses. They have old pipes, broken heaters, and roofs that leak. And sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and replace the system before you waste thousands of dollars on Band-Aids.
Exactly. Moving on to our final segment, we have something that is less about money and more about the weird, rigid world of zoning rules.
The auto repair shop that isn't an auto repair shop. I love this detail in the notes.
This is one of my favorite parts of the meeting because it really highlights how outdated laws can trap modern businesses.
So who is the applicant here?
A business owner named Gary Weber. He has a location at 4-6 Pheasant Run. He wants to open a shop that applies protective plastic coatings.
Like those clear wraps you put on high-end cars to stop stone chips.
Exactly. Or coating a countertop. It's light work. There's no grease, no loud engines, no disassembled transmissions lying around. It's basically applying a giant high-tech sticker.
It sounds pretty low impact for the neighborhood.
But the township zoning code doesn't have a category for plastic coating shop. It was written before that industry even existed. So it defaults to the closest thing they have on the books, which is E12 auto repair.
And I assume auto repair comes with some heavy baggage in the code book.
Massive baggage, specifically regarding parking requirements. If you are classified as an auto repair shop, the code mandates that you have 100 parking spaces.
100 spaces. For a shop that wraps cars, that's like a strip mall parking lot.
Yes. But Mr. Weber's business model involves doing most of the work off-site, at the customer's location. He calculates he only needs 19 spaces to operate.
So he is caught in a bureaucratic trap. The rule book says auto repair, so he has to build a parking lot for 80 cars that will literally never be there.
Unless he gets a variance. He has to go to the zoning hearing board and ask for a special exception. And this is where the Board of Supervisors had to make a choice during the meeting. Do they support his application? Do they oppose it? Or do they stay neutral?
And what did they do?
They voted to take no position.
No position. That sounds like a cop-out, like they were just shrugging their shoulders. But in local politics, that's actually a very specific signal, isn't it?
It is a very loud signal. If the board was worried about traffic or noise or environmental impact, they would send the township solicitor to formally oppose the variance. By taking no position, they are essentially giving a silent nod of approval. They are telling the zoning board, we trust you to handle this, we don't have a problem with it.
It's a victory for common sense. It lets the business open without paving over an acre of grass for absolutely no reason.
Precisely. And speaking of common sense improvements, John Mack, wearing a different hat this time, gave an update on the Human Relations Commission, or HRC.
He was recently elected secretary of the HRC, right?
He was. And he is pushing for modernization. He pointed at a glaring tech gap between the township and the borough.
What's the gap?
It's all about accessibility. If you experience discrimination in Newtown Borough, you can go to their website and fill out a simple Google Doc incident report. It takes 2 minutes. It's intuitive.
Easy. Accessible, you can do from your phone.
But in Newtown Township, no such link exists. There is no easy digital way to file that report. You have to jump through hoops.
That seems like such low-hanging fruit. A Google Doc is free. It takes 5 minutes to set up.
It is. And that is exactly what Mack is pushing for. He wants better web accessibility and more transparent meeting minutes for the HRC. It's a small detail, but for someone trying to report a civil rights violation, that barrier to entry really matters. If you make it hard to report, people just won't report.
Absolutely. It's about making the government actually user-friendly for the people paying for it.
So looking back at this entire meeting, we have a lot of moving parts. We have the fire services agreement, which was a compromise diplomacy winning over strict math.
Safety winning over the checkbook.
We have the consent agenda, hiding some very large, very questionable consultant fees.
That $100 an hour, 100-hour a week mystery.
And we have the day-to-day grind of salt trucks, broken boilers, and zoning variances.
It really paints a picture of the constant balancing act of local government. On one hand, you have to maintain relationships like with the borough. You can't just bully them into paying the full $350,000 if they refuse, because then you have no contract and the safety of the entire region is compromised. So the supervisors took the hit. They chose safety over accounting.
But on the other hand, you have residents like John Mack and Eric Pomeranz who are watching every single penny. And frankly, they seem to be finding things the supervisors might be missing.
That is the crucial role of the engaged citizen, isn't it? Think about it. If Mack hadn't pulled that $500,000 figure for the consultant out of the pile, nobody would be talking about it. It would just be another line item in a PDF that nobody reads.
It really makes you wonder what else is buried in those piles of bills month after month.
It does. It makes you want to go to the next meeting just to see for yourself. But before we get too cynical about the bills and the arguments, we should end on a positive note. Despite the snow, the broken boiler, and the arguments over money, Chairman Merriman did share a really nice statistic at the end of the meeting.
Yes, he did. Newtown was voted the 7th safest city in Pennsylvania.
According to a report from Patch.
Which is significant.
Hey, I'll take it. 7th safest in the whole state is pretty impressive.
It is. It shows that despite the administrative headaches and the budget fights we've been talking about, the actual function of the township keeping people safe is working. The police, the professional fire department they're paying for, the code enforcement, it's adding up to a safe community. The system is stressed, but it's working.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think the takeaway here is about that boring term we discussed earlier, the consent agenda.
I agree. The question I'd leave everyone with is this. Is efficiency worth the risk? We all want shorter meetings. We all want our officials to move quickly so they can get home to their families. But when you lump millions of dollars into a single I vote, are you treating oversight for convenience?
And at what point does trusting the process become negligence? If a consultant is billing 100 hours a week and nobody on the board flags it until a resident brings it up, that's a wake-up call.
It certainly is something to keep an eye on.
Something to think about the next time you see a quote-unquote boring local meeting agenda. There might be a massive mystery hiding in plain sight. Thanks for diving in with us today.
Thank you.